It's been 12 months since the birth of the Spy Beach idea. It was October of last year and Cardano Rumor Rundown number 206 when I announced that I'd acquired a Spy Beach of 3 parcels in Pavia. This made sense to me at the time, and it still makes sense. Over the last year, I've embraced the metaverse concept because I truly believe it's highly unlikely that the web remains so 2D. The current two-dimensional internet does its job adequately, but making it 3D and spatial will only enrich all the experiences we currently have and share on the web. In order to keep all of us in the Army of Spies ahead of that curve, I've tried to acquire spy beaches in almost all of the most promising Cardano metaverses. Today, we're going to talk about exactly where those parcels are located and what we're going to do on them. Ready? Let's go. Today, we're going to discuss the mini spy beaches, an update on Spy Village on Cardano Island, an update on Spy Island on Reach, Ardana going open source, another Solana outage, the crypto world realizing what we've just done, and Summon platform enabling feeless voting on Cardano. If you saw this image and thought to yourself, man, we're only a handful of days into autumn, and I already miss summer. Or if you're finding value in these videos each weekday, please consider delegating to the Army of Spies stake pool, ticker AOS. It seems like it was just yesterday, but it was actually 12 months ago that I posted this video. This was Cardano Rumor Rundown number 206. In that video, I announced that I had bought 3 parcels in Pavia and that they were going to be Spy Beach. The reason I bought those parcels is the same reason I'm still buying parcels in Cardano metaverses today. It's because I really believe there's no way all the things we do on the web currently will stay so 2D. Right now, the vast majority of the things we do on the web are very 2D. In Cardano in particular, the community spends a lot of time on Twitter and on Reddit and on YouTube, and a lot of it's very 2D. Maybe some of the YouTube stuff is becoming a little more 3D, but we're pretty much just reading text on Reddit and Twitter, and it can be very entertaining. Like, the 2D social media platforms are doing an adequate job of connecting us and allowing us to share news and information and experiences. But I really believe that all of those shared experiences, at least the shared experiences, but maybe all of them, will be enriched by being a little more spatial and a little bit more 3D. I know a lot of people have kind of a visceral reaction to that. They say, hey, humans have been reading things for a long, long time, and it works just fine. It's actually a fantastic way to communicate information via text. And I agree with that. And I think that'll still be happening. But there are a lot of other things we do. There's a lot of back and forth text that I think would be enriched if we added a little audio component to it. And when we are having these back and forth conversations, a lot of times real time via text, it would also enrich the experience if we could look at each other, or at least some kind of representation of each other. I'm not saying the anonymity that I think a lot of us in crypto value so much needs to go away. But if we could look at some kind of self-selected representation of each other, it does give this sense of connection that I think you don't have when you're just sending text back and forth. And with the rise of social media over the last couple of decades, we've seen a little bit of alienation. And I think a big piece of that has to do with the text-only communication we've been doing a lot of. And don't get me wrong, I'm not against text social media. I think it's one of the best things. It's one of the most entertaining and best things that's ever happened. But it is a lot easier for us to be less than cordial with each other when there's no sense at all of being in the same space. I'm hoping when we're actually looking at each other, or at least a visual representation of each other, everybody's going to be a little more collegial, a little more cordial. It'll be a lot more like real life. Because one of the things I've seen said most often in relation to a lot of the bad communication that happens online is that people wouldn't be like that with each other in many cases if they were actually in the same physical space, if it was real life. That rings true to me. I think people behave differently toward other people when there's some sense of being in the same space. I don't know if that's a deeply rooted evolutionary thing, like we have to fear physical violence when we're speaking negatively of someone in the same space as them, so we're a little bit more reserved in how negative we're willing to be with somebody when they're standing in front of us. I don't know what it is, but I think people behave better. They communicate better when there's some sense of being in the same space. And things like Zoom calls don't quite do it. Zoom calls are like people taking turns being on stage. It's not like an actual discussion in a lot of cases. I think we can do better with Web3 involving some blockchain things, some crypto things, and this whole concept we've been calling the metaverse. But to me, it really embodies everything that's going to make up this new 3D, more 3D at least, and more spatial version of the web and social media that we've been doing for a couple decades now. I think it would be really great if all of us in the Army of Spies could be ahead of the curve on this whole move toward 3D. Because if you think about it, what we're doing right now on social media is kind of just a super amateur version of a metaverse anyway. We all have avatars already. Everybody's got PFPs. It's just that they're 2D. And we're already talking to each other. It's just that we're doing it via 2D text. We're not doing it via audio. I think a lot of these things, once these things we're currently doing on the web, especially with social media, once those things go 3D, it's going to be very hard to distinguish them from this thing we're calling the metaverse right now anyway. I think all those things kind of get folded into this metaverse concept. And because we're already doing this amateur make-believe version of a metaverse where everybody has, little 2D avatars anyways, we might as well just take this whole thing 3D. When I released this video, this was the only map we had of Pavia. This was a community created map, or at least created by one person in the community, a third party, not by Pavia. And this was generated just based on the X and Y coordinates of all the parcels, all the Pavia parcels that were out there. Needless to say, things have changed a lot over the last 12 months. We now have this official map of Pavia. We've had 3 land cells in Pavia, and everybody has proliferated their 2D avatars, their PFPs or other images all over this map. So we can kind of see this transformation from 2D to 3D happening just in this one project. I mean, right now, the Pavia project is pretty much just this gigantic 2D map. But at some point, if they carry out their roadmap, we're going to have a 3D version of this whole world. So when I bought these parcels in Pavia, all we knew was that this was water. We didn't know about these actual sand beach sections. So I saw this was on the water and I called it Spy Beach. Maybe now it's more of a seashore. We don't really know what it's going to look like, but I'm going to keep calling this the original Spy Beach. And here are those parcels right here. These 3 parcels are the original Spy Beach. You can see they're on the mainland, pretty close to the Pavia Plaza. So hopefully we'll be able to have some fun on the original Spy Beach right here. As many of you already know, there's also going to be a big presence of the Army of Spies in Virtua's Cardano Island, or on Cardano Island. So here's the map where you can select your parcels on Cardano Island. So we decided beforehand, Spy Village was going to be over here in this sphere. And I can see a lot of you have already selected parcels over there. I'm sure there's some other people, some non-Army of Spies people, but I'll bet a lot of these are Army of Spies people. I love that the vast majority of the parcels that have been selected are just from the rare. They're from the more broadly distributed rarity of Virtua parcels. There's a few legendary in there, and there's a few special, but they're mostly rare. And if you look at the other possible locations, I mean, this is where the Virtua hub is. In the center, we see a lot of special and legendary. Over here, we see a good mix of green as well, but definitely there's some special and legendary. Over here, where the Cardano hub is, again in the center, we see a lot of special and legendary, and over here, not as much activity. So I think we've done a pretty good job so far. I've mentioned before, I only have a common large parcel, so I won't get to pick up my parcel until Tuesday, till tomorrow, as you listen to this. But I'm hoping definitely to grab one of these in here. This will be another location where we can have sort of Friday night social events and see if there's anything to this whole metaverse thing. The Army of Spies also has a presence in Cornucopias. I've got several of the in-game parcels, but I wasn't sure how good those would be for social events. So I've also got a medium custom dome where we can kind of build out whatever seems like it'll be the best for having little Friday night get-togethers. I'm not totally sure exactly what that's going to be, and whether there'll be audio chat, all those kinds of things. But I do have a custom dome for that purpose in Cornucopias. We also have our own self-appointed spy island in Reach Metaverse. It's this island right here. And Reach doesn't necessarily know anything about Spy Island. I'm sure they know about it, but they didn't tell us we could have the island. We're just kind of commandeering it. Of course, it's open to other people. I'm sure some other people have bought property on this island, but I also know some Army of Spies people have bought property on this island. I have 4 parcels here. I believe they're here, 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 and here. I could be off by a spot or two, but I believe it's these 4 right here. So I don't know yet what we'll be able to build out here, but I figured we might as well have our own spy island. Of course, it was pretty obvious from the start that the Army of Spies couldn't be contained to just Earth. We would need moon bases as well, and we've got multiple. So on Artifact Moon, we've got a far side moon base and a near side moon base. I understand these are very large parcels as well, so I didn't see any reason to have more than 2. But we have a near side moon base in Section 96, Plot 21, and a far side moon base in Section 19, Plot 4. Of course, if we're going to have moon bases, we have to have one on CardaStation. CardaStation is one of the only operable metaverses in Cardano. We've got a lot of metaverse projects in Cardano, and a lot of them, you can't actually walk around in them. CardaStation, along with Reach, are some of the only metaverses in Cardano where you can already be in the virtual world walking around. So, of course, we have to have a moon base in CardaStation. And it is located right here. You'll notice it's pretty close to the Army of Spies building that Baggy Pants created right over, which I believe is like, I believe that's like right over here. Or right over here. It's like very close somewhere right here. I figured this was kind of a nice central location, and I was informed it's a little bit easier to build if you buy something like a corner lot. Right over here is sort of that valley area. So we also have we have easy access to sort of like view down into the valley, close to the garage, close to the community hub. I am hoping we'll have some good times on CardaStation as well. We also have a spy beach in Ada Realm. Ada Realm is another one of those projects where you could actually be on the ground level walking around, at least in the early days. I mean, kind of walking around. It was sort of like an invisible, no avatar, first person perspective where you could either be sort of flying through the air overhead with your camera, or you could be right at ground level, functionally kind of walking around on the surface of the metaverse. I thought that was worthy of having a presence in Ada Realm, especially back in such early days. So we have most of these parcels in the first 2 rows right here. I think I may also have a couple back here in this, maybe in this 3rd row, but I believe we have a majority, at least, not all, but a majority of the parcels in the first 2 rows here, which makes up a pretty good little spy beach in Ada Realm. Like I'm always saying, we won't really know which of these virtual worlds will be a fun place to hang out, probably until they're a little bit more fully developed. Until we can actually get on the ground and walk around, we won't really know which of these virtual worlds will be fun. And maybe even once we can walk around, we won't really know yet, because there's definitely probably some benefits to some network effects. If a certain metaverse has a huge number of people in it all the time, that's going to add to the fun. And we probably won't be able to figure those things out for a while, which is why I've engaged in some portfolio theory here. And I've tried to buy parcels that could make up spy beaches or Army of Spies areas, at least, in a whole bunch of metaverses. There are some other great metaverse projects that aren't included in this list, and that might just be because I don't happen to have a parcel there, or it might be because there's something special about that metaverse that I thought would make it hard for the entire Army of Spies community to adopt that metaverse. Like maybe the NFTs make the avatars and they're very, very expensive NFTs, something like that. But I'm hoping we can start once a couple of these metaverses become a little bit more functional and they have things like audio chat, or there's at least some way we can add audio chat. We can start having little, Friday or Saturday night events where we can all be hanging out together in the metaverse and doing this whole 3D interaction thing while we're also simultaneously sitting at home having a few nice drinks. One final disclaimer: even though we've come a long way, I mean, we started with this and look where we are now with, a handful. We started with one metaverse project in Cardano. Now we have a handful of really good projects. Remember, as with any project in Cardano or elsewhere in crypto, any one of these metaverse projects could fail and never build the things we're imagining they're going to build. And we won't really know until they actually build those things. We've got a huge amount of things going on in the world of Cardano, both metaverse and otherwise. And while all of that's going on, I am shocked, just shocked to inform you that Solana has experienced another outage where they are not processing transactions. As always, developers across the ecosystem are working on diagnosing the issue and to restart the network. It's probably restarted by now. This was back on September 30th, but this is yet another outage for Solana. I can only imagine. I when I see stuff like this, I think about things like the Spy Beach idea. I mean, how disruptive is it if the blockchain's not working? If the metaverse you want to have an event in cannot access the blockchain, if the blockchain can't tell the metaverse that you in fact do own those parcels, that you are the rightful owner and you can use those parcels, this could be very disruptive. And that's just one use case out of the many, many, many use cases that we now have in the world of crypto and blockchain technology. And, we'll continue to develop new use cases, but a huge, huge amount of them just don't work if the blockchain doesn't actually do its thing. You couldn't buy new parcels. You couldn't buy new NFTs to use on your parcels. None of that works. The blockchain doesn't work. So I'm glad we're in Cardano and not some other blockchains right now. I know some of you right now are probably screaming, "No, you don't understand. Metaverse platforms require off-chain storage, and the off-chain storage could just remember that you own those parcels." I know, but still much happier to be in a blockchain ecosystem where the blockchain actually works. Speaking of Cardano being the best, it looks like the rest of the crypto world is slowly discovering what we just did. Here's a post from someone on Twitter who says they have 310,000 subscribers on YouTube. That's pretty wide reach. This post is confirmed: Cardano Vasil hard fork has cut ADA gas fees. Not that we use that terminology, but hey, we'll take what we can get from these non-Cardano people. Has cut ADA gas fees by nearly 50% and transaction space by 10x. So these are some of the figures we're seeing out of some of these projects like MusliSwap, who are already implementing some of the cost and space saving functions from Vasil. And it looks like the rest of the space is kind of picking this up, because they're probably comparing what Cardano actually achieves, what we actually achieved in the Vasil hard fork, to what some of the projects are even just saying they want to do. And it'd be pretty ambitious for another project to come out and say, "Hey, we're going to cut transaction fees by 50%, and transaction spaces are going to be reduced by 10x, you don't see projects even making those kinds of ambitious claims, let alone achieving them. They might make claims that are even less ambitious than this, and then they don't achieve them. Cardano just goes ahead and achieves these things. More awesomeness, Cardano ambassador Pete points out that the Ardana project just open sourced all their code before launch. And here are all those repositories over at GitHub. Look at this. Public all. This is great. The sort of open source thing, the open source drive in Cardano, I think is going to be a great thing for our ecosystem as teams share what they're doing and everybody's going to have to reinvent the wheel. Speaking of reinventing things, but in a good way, ADAO announces that @Summon platform will enable feeless voting this month. No cost, no taxable event, on-chain, and transparent. And this was in response to this comment. Wish there was a better way to vote than this, to be honest. Taxable event in my country, and that's true for a lot of people in the EU and also in North America. Probably a lot more than even realize it. If you are purchasing or earning ADA at a lower cost basis than the price of ADA, when you pay those fees, there's often some tax interaction in there if you're in certain jurisdictions, especially in those two areas. So this would be a very nice bit of progress for governance and voting in Cardano projects. I hope you had a great weekend and you're starting out a great week, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.